Welcome to the Ambassador Baseball Show. My name is Cole Cleveland, and today we will continue our series that we have titled Rethinking Athletics. Over the last several episodes, we've talked about worship, we've talked about family priorities, we've talked about the purpose of athletics, we've talked about the role of parents, and even the role of the coach. And today I want to discuss something that sits underneath every single one of those conversations, and that is authority, order, structure. Because one of the greatest problems in modern youth athletics is not talent. It is definitely not facilities. You've seen so much money poured into that. It's not competition, because it seems like more and more people are getting better and stronger, and teams are getting better and stronger and faster. It's not resources, because we are pouring all sorts of resources into youth athletics. The greatest problem is confusion. And confusion will always produce conflict. As a matter of fact, if you spend enough time around youth sports, you begin to notice that almost every conflict traces back to one simple issue. Nobody knows who's responsible for what. Parents think they're the coaches. Coaches try to become the parents. Organizations attempt to replace the families. Athletes become the decision makers, and the result is absolute chaos. But Scripture repeatedly teaches that God is a God of order. 1 Corinthians 14:33, for God is not a God of confusion, but a God of peace. That verse is often applied to worship, but the principle extends far beyond a church service. Throughout creation, God reveals himself through order. The universe operates according to order. The family operates according to order. The church operates according to order. Society and government operates according to a God-ordained order. And whenever what God ordains is rejected, confusion will automatically follow that. And that's exactly why we are witnessing so much chaos in youth athletics today. Let me give you an example. Suppose a coach establishes an expectation for a team. These are the practice times. These are our playing standards. This is our behavior expectation. This is our uniform. This is what you can and cannot wear. This is our discipline. And then on the drive home, a parent begins questioning every decision the coach makes. Well, you don't have to act like that. Well, the coach isn't really right in that regard. You can do this. Well, you don't have to wear what the team wears. You can wear this. You know what's happened? Authority has been undermined. The child is now caught between competing voices. And that's right, I said the child. The coach says one thing, the parent says the other, and confusion enters the system. Or consider the opposite side of this. Okay, a coach begins inserting himself into matters that belong to the parents. And what's sad is that a lot of times parents throw their kids at coaches expecting for the coach to parent their kids because they're not willing to do the hard work it takes to discipline their kids. When that happens, the coach begins operating outside of the authority that God has given to him over that child. Again, what's happening? Confusion has entered into the system. Those problems don't necessarily have bad intentions at the beginning. Now I say not necessarily. A lot of times they do. The problem is the disorder that comes with it. And anytime you're out of order, there will be a production of instability, uneven ground. It's like walking on sand, trying to build a house on sand, trying to walk on water. one of the things that we've tried to establish with the ambassadors is a very simple principle, okay? Everybody needs to understand their role. It's a very simple principle, but from the beginning, we have a meeting and everybody signs off on their role for the season. The parent has a role, the coach has a role, the athlete has a role, and when those roles are respected, things operate in a healthy environment. But when those roles become blurred, conflict becomes inevitable. Let me be clear. Authority doesn't mean superiority. Okay, that is a misnomer. Authority means responsibility. Okay, the father is not superior to his family. He's responsible for his family. The elder of the church is not superior in the church. He is responsible in shepherding the church. And a coach is not superior to his players. He is responsible for guiding them, directing them, teaching them, molding them. The modern world hates authority because it ultimately misunderstands authority. Authority is not oppression. Authority is stewardship, especially when you do it in a God-ordained way. When authority is exercised biblically, it ultimately becomes a blessing to everyone involved. One of the greatest gifts that a parent can give a child is teaching them how to function underneath authority. And you know why that is? Because all of life requires it. Students must submit to their teachers. Employees must submit to their employers. Citizens must submit to governing authorities. Church members submit to their church leaders. Believers submit to Christ. The ability to function rightly underneath authority is one of the foundational marks of maturity. And athletics provides a tremendous opportunity to teach that lesson. But unfortunately, youth sports is teaching kids the very opposite. It's teaching children that every authority can be questioned. I mean, you have umpires calling a ball on a ball that's 2 feet outside the zone. And you have kids throwing up their arms and saying, "Are you kidding me?" And you know what's happening? The parents are doing the same thing. Every decision that an authoritative figure makes is challenged, and it can be challenged. And what's crazy is that it's supported in being challenged. Every disappointment deserves an appeal. Every consequence has an excuse, and most of the time it's the parents that are making the excuse for the kid, so that the parent, they have so much pride built up in them, they don't become embarrassed. And eventually, we are creating athletes who cannot receive correction. That is the world we're living in today. We have young people that cannot receive instruction even from their parents. Their parents are having to bribe them to simply do the most simple act of discipline. We have young people that can't receive accountability. And when the athlete eventually becomes the adult, that is out of order and chaos will ensue. Listen, the issue is not baseball. It was never baseball. The issue was formation. That's why structure matters so much. Structure creates clarity. Clarity creates stability. And stability allows for growth. I mean, think about what happens when structure is just absent. Okay, practices become inconsistent. Expectations become very unclear. Parents become frustrated. Players become very confused. And then coaches become exhausted. And everybody's pointing fingers at each other because nobody knows why this is happening. But the answer is simple. The answer is that there was no structure to begin with. One of the reasons that the current model of youth athletics feels so exhausting is because so many organizations have substituted activity for structure. Okay, everyone is busy. Nobody knows where they're going, but everybody's moving. Nobody knows why they're going there, but everybody is going somewhere. Listen, that's not leadership. That's chaos. And chaos eventually consumes itself. Okay, this is also why I believe so many Christian families need to rethink and think carefully about the systems that they are placing their children inside of. Because systems will discipline individuals. Listen, every organization has a culture. Every organization has priorities. Every organization has assumptions. And if those assumptions are not built on biblical order, then they will eventually produce biblical disorder. And there are very real consequences that occur when you are out of order. You know, most people think freedom comes when you have no structure. Lack of structure means freedom. But Scripture teaches the very opposite. Okay, freedom actually flourishes inside of God-ordained boundaries. I mean, that is quite literally what liberty is. A train is free when it stays on the tracks. A river is powerful when it remains within its banks. A family flourishes with blessings when it follows God's design. And you know what? Athletics becomes healthy when authority and order and responsibility are clearly established. This is one of the reasons that modern athletics often feels so emotional and emotionally unstable. The system itself lacks order. Parents are constantly frustrated. Coaches are constantly tired and frustrated and exhausted. Athletes are confused. They don't know what the end goal is here. They don't even know what the means is here. It becomes frustration. Everyone is trying to solve the symptom, and they're ignoring the root problem. The root problem is confusion, okay? And confusion is the natural result of disorder. The solution is not more activity, okay? The solution is not more tournaments. The solution is not more travel. The solution is not more opportunities. Okay, the solution to this problem is to restore order. And that begins by understanding the roles that God has assigned. Parents should be biblical parents. Coaches should be first and foremost disciple makers. Athletes should be learners. Churches should be guiding spiritually. And families should be leading these children. When those things happen, athletics becomes healthy, not perfect, but healthy, because now athletics is functioning underneath God's design rather than competing against God's design. As we begin wrapping up this series, we're going to shift from diagnosing all these problems that we've been seeing, and we're going to start casting a vision towards something better. Because once we understand worship, once we understand family and athletics and parenting and coaching and authority, we can finally begin asking questions like this. What would a healthy athletic culture actually look like? What would happen if athletics truly served discipleship? What would happen if sports actually strengthened families instead of fragmenting families? What would happen if coaches viewed themselves as stewards instead of celebrities? And what would happen if athletes learned that their ultimate purpose was not self-glory, but the glory of God? That is where we're headed next. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ambassador Baseball Show. And if you would like to learn more about what we're doing and what we are building, go to our website, okcambassadors.com or sdgathletics.com, and start reading about our ministry and how we are building from the ground up a discipleship ministry that is shaping the next generation using athletics as a tool, because the end goal is not to have a great baseball player and a team that wins championships. The goal is to raise young men and women who love the Lord and understand how to use the gifts that God has given them for His glory for the rest of their lives. I appreciate your support. Thank you for reaching out and being so encouraging through this series. I look forward to continuing it next time. We'll see you there.